What does it do, YouTube? Welcome back to another episode of Scotty Says. I am your host. And as the calendar turns from September to October, this is the greatest time of year, I think, for sports fans. Baseball, postseason baseball is about to get underway. My Cardinals just clinched another National League Central Division, and Albert the Pooh Bear Pujols hit his 700th home run, and I was there in the building to witness it live. Check out episode 60 if you haven't already. Then there's basketball about to kick off now in October, and the LA Lakers. That is a perennial soap opera with the King and those other co-stars. The Rubber Band Man Robin, now Pat Bev, Russ, still there. So there are expectations and concerns, as always, when it comes to the Lakers. But this episode focuses on the NFL. Week three, and where we last left off, the LA Rams were 1-1. Having just survived by the whiskers a scare against the Falcons, and now traveling for their first road game of the season to Glendale, Arizona, to take on the Gridbirds, Kyler Murray, and the Cardinals. And after 2 weeks, all four teams in the NFC West were 1-1, tied for first or for last, depending on how you want to look at it, half full, half empty. But after week 3, only one team would be in sole possession of first place. And you know who it is. It's the Rams, of course. But as usual, there's a lot to cover, a lot to get to. And in the interest of time, I'm only going to give you the first half game analysis. I think that will suffice in terms of illustrating my points about McGenius and the play calling. And to be honest, in the second half, it really became more of a power run game, which I like to see. In fact, the 20-25 rule was followed by McGenius. That's something I came up with last year in an effort to put restraints on that poltergeist. And it worked. Restraints were placed on the poltergeist. There were only 25 pass attempts by Matty from the D, 20 run carries, and that's the 20-25 rule. You got to have 20 carries on the ground and no more than 25 throws in order to restrain that poltergeist. And restrained he was. There were no picks, although there was a Pulte sighting. There was an attempt, but Arizona did not accept the haunted gift. So, as the stat line read, no interceptions for Matty from the D, although he is still leading the NFL in interceptions. That's without even throwing one in week 3. We'll get to all of that. But where I want to start, as you know, I will give nicknames, various nicknames, and those nicknames are fluid, to the cast of characters involved in these weekly sagas. And as you may know, sometimes these nicknames are not necessarily flattering. Never personal, but sometimes there's a little dig to them. And as you may know, number 5, Ramsey, has been nicknamed for the last few months Ashes. Why? Because he kept getting burnt to smoke and ashes by opposing wide receivers. And I am happy to say that since the end of that Atlanta Falcons game, when Ashes rose up high pointed the ball in the end zone to save the game with a pick on Mariota. And since he ran across to the sideline and yelled to the media, "I am him," since that point, it seems like number 5 has been revitalized. And I'm glad to see it. And as you may know, prior to being nicknamed Ashes, I nicknamed him Socks. Socks because he has a penchant for being the only player on the team to wear a different color socks. He seems to take pride in having socks that are out of sync with everybody else. And in Arizona, that was no exception. Number 5 was the only player with gold socks on the entire team. But what I really want to say is not only was he not burnt to ashes, he played a fantastic ball game. He followed up his great work against Atlanta with an even stronger game. No pick, but an even better game all around, in my opinion, against Kyler Murray and the Gridbirds. And so I am happy to say that the game ball, in my opinion, goes to number 5, Socks, balling out. And it's a welcome sight for sore eyes because the Rams have a secondary issue. So many injuries in their secondary. They're down 5 defensive backs now. Because really you could say the defensive player of the game was the rookie Kendrick. Darian Kendrick, I believe his name is. Darian Kendrick had 9 solo tackles, 9, and balled out. Number 5, Ashes, Socks, had 8 solo tackles, and he was hitting people left and right. He was a force, a presence, and the Rams needed that with so many of their DBs down and out. For example, safety Jordan Fuller was inactive, out with injury. The rookie Kobe Durant, who balled out against Atlanta, was out with that hamstring. David Long was out. Sean Jolly out. And, of course, on the O-line, Brian Allen was out. Now, once again, when we talk about inactives, I can't help but talk about Bryce Perkins, who, in my estimation, should clearly be QB2. Once again, he was inactive, did not dress, relegated to the practice team while the Wolford roamed the sidelines, waiting for an opportunity to get in. But I am also pleased to report that rookie sensation wide receiver Lance McCutcheon made his way off the inactive list and was dressed for the Cardinals game. Lance McCutcheon dressed for the game. He did not play. He had no field action, but baby steps. He did make progress off the practice squad. I'd like to see that same progress for Bryce Perkins. You already know how I feel about that subject. So the O-line shuffle continues, but the Rams looked pretty good overall on offense. Now, what I'm noticing with the Rams now, aside from the fact that McGenius is back to his old tricks in the lab, cooking up some really interesting wrinkles on offense. But what I'm noticing beyond that is that the Rams are having trouble finishing off drives and cashing in touchdowns. And so that is something that is a concern because that can come back to bite you bad when you're playing better quality teams. However, Against Arizona, you can get away with it. Against the Cardinals, they were able to get away with it. And we'll talk about that more in game analysis. Now, I've got another concern. A-Rob, Allen Robinson, much ballyhooed offseason pickup, was alleged to be big-time wide receiver who was going to more than compensate for the loss of Bobby Trees and OBJ as well. And I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, Allen Robinson seems to be struggling on the struggle bus. He seems to be having a hard time finding his footing and generating any consistency on offense. In the Arizona game, A-Rob, 2 catches for 23 yards, and he dropped a touchdown. And so for the season now, A-Rob is only averaging 2.5 catches per game after 3 games. Ugh. That's not great. And a recurring theme, as you know, the legend of Stony Wolf Funk. Well, I'm pleased to say I saw no sign of J Funk. And the Wolf, of course, was not needed, thankfully. But Stony, we have to talk about Hands of Stone. McGee is, and this is the wrinkle I'm alluding to, has shifted from 11 personnel, his staple. He shifts on the fly, shifts the personnel look to 21 by moving Stoney from wide receiver to fullback. And as I said last week, I like the wrinkle. In fact, as fullback, at one point, Stoney decleated J.J. Watt, knocked him on his ass, and then caught a little short 3-yard pass in the flat to boot. So I like the wrinkle. The problem is McGenius, Mr. McWonder. I wonder, why did you chase away Bobby Trees for this? You chased away a core guy, a culture guy, a foundational piece on offense and of the team itself. You chased him off for Stoney and A-Rob? Really? Because I don't see the production and I don't see what the advantage has been unless there was something personal involved. And I speculated as much when they traded Bobby Trees. I was unhappy about it then, and I still don't like it today. So that has been my soapbox moment for this evening. Now, let's get to some of the more interesting notes from week 3. On the positive side, there were no interceptions by the Poltergeist. He was restrained, thankfully. And the run game showed signs of life, especially in the second half. And this is despite Cam the Grill Akers' fumble at the goal line. And that's another example of the Rams offense being unable to cash in a nice long drive. Now, the rumor is, word on the street, is that the Grill has some practice habit issues. That maybe he's not so fond of practice. Practice? We're talking practice? That maybe he's somehow gotten himself into McGee's doghouse. And if in fact he isn't the hardest worker in practice, perhaps this helps to account for some of the habits we've seen in game. Not finishing off runs, almost seeming disconnected at times, and then those critical fumbles. However, Cam Akers rushed 12 carries, 51 yards. That's a 5.1 average and a touchdown, not counting that fumble. Darrell Henderson only had 4 carries for 17 yards, but he was on his average 4.2 or so yards per carry. And Super Cup, 1 carry, 20 yards. Soup got his first rushing touchdown ever. Although he did his streak of 90 yards, 100 yards per game, that streak did come to an end. Soup only had 4 catches for 44 yards. In fact, when you look at the numbers after the game, the leading receiver for the Rams was Stoney. Hands of Stone had 4 catches, 66 yards, which is a nice average, 16.5. But my point is, wide receiver play is sorely lacking. And what do you expect when you chase away one of your best wide receivers in Bobby Trees? So Stoney had 4 catches. Higbee had 4 catches. Soup had 4 catches. Kendall Blanton had a catch. B. Powell had 2 catches. And Allen Robinson, 2 measly catches for 23 yards. I'm glad to say that Matty from the D had no picks, although that probably shouldn't have been the case. 1 was dropped. He was 18 for 25. 25 is a good number of attempts for Matty from the D. Doctor Who for 249 yards. Now, after 3 games, Matty, Doc, leads the NFL in interceptions, and he didn't even throw one officially last game. And he has a 59 QBR on the season. That's not great. That's not great. But let's look glass half full. He does lead the NFL in completion percentage, I do believe, after 3 games. So there's that. Overall, though, you really have to go back to the D and how well they've played. Shout out AD99 the Beast, who recorded his 100th sack, fastest D lineman to 100 sacks in history. And that sack on Kyler Murray was a thing of beauty because it showed the Beast athleticism. He went full Superman, diving, tripped up Kyler Murray's little feet, tripped him for the sack. And so that was sack number 100. Congratulations, AD99, on that milestone. Now, on D, Bobby Wagner, B-Wags, 6 tackles, 3 assists. Nick, the thumper, Nick Scott, had 6 tackles and an assist. And so, overall, the defense played inspired ball. They gave up long drives. And this has been something we've seen in each of the first 3 games. They've been giving up long drives. But in the last 2 games, primarily, they're keeping teams out of the end zone and they're settling for field goals. And as I mentioned, Darian Kendrick balled completely out. Unfortunately, yet another DB down now because Mr. Kendrick is in concussion protocol going into week 4. The Cardinals-Rams matchup in Arizona. The Cardinals go down to defeat. They fall to 1-2. San Francisco, them damn Niners, go down to defeat. at the hands of Denver. And so San Francisco is 1-2, and Seattle is 1-2 in the cellar, where I expect they will remain. And next up for the Rams, it is in fact them damn Niners. Monday Night Football, Rams, Niners in the Bay. So that should be an interesting game. Now, one thing I will say about them damn Niners, they hit. They got hitters. They play after the whistle. They a little thuggish, okay? And they don't like the Rams. And so I expect this game will be intense. And the Rams are a road dog. They're an underdog in this game on Monday night. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't come away from the Bay with the win. But I'm making a hard pick here, and I think the Rams will upset them damn Niners. Jimmy G is still trying to find his way, doing the safety dance. And, you know, he really didn't get much practice time or playing time or much of any integration with the squad during that whole offseason and training camp, because they were trying to turn the page and go with Trey Lance. And now they're back to Jimmy G. One thing I will say, though, Jimmy G and the Niners, their eyes light up when the Rams come to town. So I expect it's going to be a hard-hitting game. It'll be intense. Jimmy G got beat up a little bit against Denver, so I'm hoping the Rams can continue to wear on him on Monday night. Now, let's get to game analysis. Game analysis. I'm only going to give you analysis on the first half. I think for illustrative purposes, that will suffice. Now, after a block punt, the Rams take over at the Arizona 35-yard line. And McGenius comes out in his well-recognized 11 personnel grouping, and starting at wide receiver, Super Cup, A-Rob, Hansel Stone. Higbee's at tight end, Darrell Henderson in the backfield. Now, A-Rob and Soup are wide right, and Stoney motions from the left side of the formation into the backfield. It's a run play, handoff to Darrell Henderson, but no go boom is called for holding, and the run gain is negated. On 1st and 20, here's another wrinkle. McGee from the lab. Soup and Henderson split in the backfield with A-Rob and Brandon Powell wide right, Stoney wide left. Soup goes in motion across the formation, and Matty hits him out there for 9. 2nd and 11. Now, Powell wide left with A-Rob and Higbee wide right, and Soup in the backfield. Matty hits Powell with a quick wide receiver screen, and Mr. Powell goes for 16 yards. And so it's 1st and 10 at the Arizona 20. And I'm loving the McGenius ingenuity, the creativity, and I'm appreciating the use of Brandon Powell as wide receiver. Next play, first red zone play. Stoney returns at fullback with Soup wide left and A-Rob wide right. They hand off to Darrell Henderson for 6. And everything looks to be clicking right now for LA. 2nd and 4, it's a single back set. Matty from the D rolls right. He hits Soup, who was lined up wide left, for 12 more and another first down. 1st and goal from the 4. Next you see Matty in the gun with Henderson and A-Rob wide right. Powell and Soup tight left. Powell goes in motion on a sweep, but He's horse collar tackled. They throw a flag and then they pick it up. And then on 2nd and goal, Matty throws a dart to A-Rob. Goes right through his fingers. Clear drop. Now 3rd and goal. After the drop, McGee goes empty. Empty gun with A-Rob and Higbee wide left. Soup and Stoney wide right. They then go back to A-Rob in the end zone, but he gets tangled up with one of the defenders. And the poltergeist nearly strikes. The poltergeist nearly strikes right off the jump. But Arizona rejects the haunted gift from Doctor Who. And so the pass falls incomplete, and LA settles for 3. And see here right away, you see an example of not being able to finish the drive. Mistakes, drops, penalties, near turnover by the poltergeist. These kinds of mistakes will get in the way of accomplishing the long-term goal if they don't clean it up. Now, as an aside, let me note here that it seems as though the media, particularly Mark the Butt Fumbler Sanchez, is extremely preoccupied and infatuated with Stoney. In fact, the Butt Fumbler circles Stoney. Every move that he makes, he's cheering virtually, nearly coming out of his shoes with excitement when Stoney makes a block or has a 3-yard reception. And I saw another national media type raving about Stoney. And I have to say, this is pedestrian production, and I like him at fullback if he's going to be out there. But this unwarranted, undue praise and adulation, I'm seeing it from many Rams fans. Oh, Stoney is wonderful. Listen, this is a clear and obvious downgrade from Robert Woods. There's no other way to put it, just to call it what it is. And if Stoney can continue to hold on to the ball when it is thrown his way every so often, then perhaps he will earn a new nickname, or I might have to, like with Sox, revert back to his old nickname, Consonants. We will see. But for now, the Butt Fumbler needs to calm down, because ain't all that. Let's get back to regularly scheduled programming. Now, on the Rams' second possession, Cam the Grill Akers is in at tailback, and A-Rob is wide left with Soup. Stoney motions into the backfield. There's a handoff, a loss of 2 yards, the Grill, and I can't help but notice that LA has the 31st ranked run offense in the NFL. 31 of 32 at this point in time. And that's abysmal, even with the stony eye. Now 2nd and 12. Pulte hits Soup for 14 and a first down. And after a delay of game and a timeout, LA sets up the tight end screen for a first down. There appears to be some confusion with where Hands of Stone is supposed to line up on this possession. And at this point, Sanchez, the Butt Fumbler, remarks that during the week of practice, the Rams changed Hands of Stone's face mask from his traditional wide receiver mask to a more appropriate fullback face mask. And Stoney did not like it. Stoney was irritated as all hell about it, and he went to him and he said, hey, I'm not a fullback. I'm a receiver. And McGee probably said, no, not with those hands, you're not. Wear that damn fullback mask, and wear it he did. And as I mentioned, he had a couple of really nice blocks at fullback. And if you want to get all giddy and excited about that, okay, fine. But it seems to me pedestrian at best. I mean, to be all worked up about a fullback making a couple of blocks when your offense, your run game is ranked 31st of 32. Come on, wake up, folks. As I said in previous episodes, McGee is going to have a hard time winning against good teams if this is what he plans to run out there. We don't have a legitimate wide receiver threat beyond Soup at this point in time. Will OBJ come back? We don't know. Hopefully, he'll come back to LA stronger and better than ever and good to go sometime in November, but we don't know. Bobby Tree's gone. And what do you have left? A-Rob, who seems to be struggling, pedestrian, Stoney, pedestrian. These guys aren't scaring anybody. They're not scaring opposing defenses. So, Tutu Atwell, I don't see it. Now they're saying Van Jefferson, injured, might be out for weeks more. So, the Rams have issues. And Mr. McWonder, if you're listening, you need to insert some energy into your wide receiver room. You need to play Lance McCutcheon, sir. Hear me now. And I like Brandon Powell. And I like what he offers at wide receiver. He's a speedy little guy, but he's not scaring anybody either. So, back to analysis. It's 3rd and 3 now, and Matty is in the empty gun. And as the pocket collapses, he squirts out and manages to run for 4 and a first down. And so, on 1st and 10 from the Arizona 20, Hands of Stone motions into the backfield once again. And now the Rams set up in the Stony Eye with Cam at tailback. Once again, the butt fumbler, Sanchez, circles and highlights Stoney. A-Rob is wide left. And McGee motions Soup across the formation. Fly sweep. Soup takes it for 20. Touchdown LA. Touchdown Rams. 10-0 Rams. Soup's first rushing touchdown in his career. And at 10-0, everything seems to be going the Rams' way. Everything seems to be rolling so far. But we know what happened the week before. So the defense needs to play strong. And you want to see the offense continue to put some touchdowns up on the board. LA's third drive starts from their 20. And Henderson is in the backfield. Stoney in the eye. Soup and A-Rob are wide right. Then Matty shifts the formation to shotgun, single back, Stoney, wide right. McGenius is at it now. Matty hits the tight end for a big game of 28. And look who it is now. It's not Higbee this time. Kendall Blanton is back. He's back re-signed off the KC practice team. And then on the next play, Stoney himself gets in on the action with a completion from his fullback setup for 26 big yards. And Sanchez is ecstatic. He's beside himself. He's gleeful about Stoney. As the first quarter ends, it's 10-0 Rams. and they possessed the ball to start the second quarter. Now, 2nd and 12 from the Arizona 32. Dr. Who floats a perfect dime. I mean a dart to Soup for the touchdown, and no, Soup drops it. He drops the touchdown. So rare. He had a rare fumble last week, dropped a touchdown this week, and so, okay, Soup's got to refocus now. Next, the tight end screen to Higbee. It only gets a handful, though, and so once again, LA has to settle for 3. Yet another example, not cashing in touchdowns. 13-0 LA at this point in the game. 13-0. And Arizona goes 3 and out right away. And then the next play, Stoney back at fullback. Soup and Tutu split wide. Matty goes home run ball, but Tutu, Matty, not on the same page, misses. But even at this point, LA has 175 total yards to Arizona's 22. So it's a pretty dominant performance now, midway through the second quarter. Stalls, Riley Dixon punts for the first time this game, and good to see Riley Dixon seems to be okay after that crushing punt block the week before versus Atlanta. And Arizona finally gets their O rolling. But they have to settle for 3. And so with 1:50 left in the first half, LA goes 3 and out. Arizona puts up another 3. And so it's 13-6 LA at halftime. 13-6 at halftime. But my first half impressions, McGee is cooking out of the lab once again. Whatever it was that was ailing McGenius versus Buffalo, he seems to have shook it off and got himself back together. I love the variety, the diversity I'm seeing. I love the shifts, the formation changes. I love seeing the wide receivers lining up wide and then motioning into the backfield or vice versa. I just wish we had superior personnel to match the superior game planning. The players have to execute the quality play calls that McGenius is dialing up. So the offense needs to work on cashing in their drives for 7. And it's good to see Sox back at it, flying around on defense, making plays, tackling, asserting himself, playing physical and inspired football. In the second half, as I mentioned, I'm not going to give you the game analysis. You pretty much get the idea. In the second half, McGee went to a power run game more so, and I like that. Curtail. Put restraints on the poltergeist. Eat up the clock. Protect the lead. And you take the will out of the defense when you can run the ball with aggression and purpose. And that's what they were doing until that Grill fumble, another 7 points, failed to convert, left on the field. And as I mentioned, next up, San Francisco. The Rams have a lot to clean up in this week of practice, and they've got more injuries to deal with as well. But it's good to see the defense, even though it bends, it did not break. And it's good to see the creativity and innovation back in the play calling, thanks to Mr. McWonder. So, my prediction, the Rams come away with an upset win on Monday night. That's a heart call, not a head call. And so, in sole possession of first place, the Rams overall have to feel fairly good about themselves despite not playing their best football by a long shot. The defense has been bending, but it has not broken. And the offense, at times it's percolating, not cashing it in, but 2-1 and in first place in the NFC West. Oh, it is early still. And it's starting to really get good now. And whenever the Rams and the Niners meet, you know there's going to be a lot to talk about on the other side, and you best believe I will be here to cover it for you. So, until the next time, which won't be too long from this time, throw me one of these now. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. And until then, my friends, one love.